So this is an interesting question because it's one I've been asked recently, and that is what needs to be CE marked. You know, if you're a manufacturer, what does that? What kind of stuff needs to be CE marked? Like, does a table? Does a laptop? Does a bottle? Door? Like, walk us through.
Yes,
that.
I mean, this is part of the detail that you end up getting into. So I actually wrote a LinkedIn post recently about these mic stand arms. Okay, so the box turned up, and on the back of it had a little Roche logo, implying that it was Roche compliant. So there's no mercury or lead in here. It's good.
Cashback.
Yeah. It had a CE mark on it. And I'm not sure, it might have had, yes, it had the wheelie bin logo as well. So the wheelie bin logo is for what is it? It's WE. Yeah. So waste, electrical, and electronic equipment. I think that's what it stands for.
Well done.
Yeah, good testing. But obviously this isn't a piece of electrical equipment. Is it? Because it didn't come with the mic. It didn't come with the electrical cable. It's just a piece of metal with some springs. It's literally all it is. So Roche isn't applicable. Okay. The wheelie bin logo or the WE directive isn't applicable because there's no electrical equipment there. And what on earth, what directive are you applying to put a CE logo on it? I don't know. In fact, I'm telling you that there isn't any legislation that would stipulate putting a CE mark on such a thing. So the only piece of legislation that applies to something like this is going to be the General Product Safety Regulation, okay, which isn't a CE marking directive at all. So it's very different. Well, it's not very different. It's a much simpler piece of legislation and requirement. So your general question about, I haven't answered your question. What does CE marking apply to? Well, I think there's almost 30 pieces of legislation that are kind of CE marking legislation. And the question is, what is the scope of all of those? That's it. And I'm not going to pretend in any fashion to know the scope of all of them. But the main ones, or the most common ones that you'll run into, are the machinery directive. So anything with powered moving parts, that needs to be CE marked. Electrical equipment, so the low voltage directive. And again, interestingly, or maybe not too interestingly, there are scope boundaries for the low voltage directive. So there are minimum and maximum voltages. So there are some things that don't get CE marked because the voltage is too low. But typically anything that you plug into the mains is going to be CE marked. But that's also going to fall under the EMC directive. So it's going to be CE marked under that as well. And then when you start talking things like doors, I'm operating outside of my expertise now. I'm going to say that caveat. You start talking about the construction products regulation. So things like in here, we've got, what are these? Ceiling panels. I think they fall under the scope of the CPR. Certainly things like plasterboard. Yeah. So loads of those products will be CE marked. So anything that, I don't know how you put a general statement on it, because the table and this chair we're sat on, not CE marked. Now, they should comply with the General Product Safety Regulation. So there is legislation out there that need to be considered, but they won't be CE marked.
Okay.
So it's not a simple answer.
No. Rarely is it a simple answer.
Yeah.
But good to have a rough idea.
Yes.
Maybe we'll follow this one up with a more concise answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably individual questions for the scope on each of those.
Yeah.
Because there's ridiculous nuances for each of them as well. Even things like how the machinery directive interacts with the low voltage directive. So, you would immediately think, low voltage, that will apply to, let's pick something, let's go a lawnmower. It's electrical, so the low voltage directive must apply. Well, seemingly not, because there's a nuance within the machinery directive, because it's a piece of machinery, there are powered moving parts, that mean that if the machinery directive applies, then the low voltage directive, the requirements are automatically included, but you don't cite the low voltage directive. So there are various different nuances in there, and this is why Knox Thomas exists. We want to help people navigate the nuances of all these pieces of legislation, which are difficult to engage with. And I mean, if anyone's got any questions out there, like Jon has just asked, please do reach out to us. We're very happy to engage with questions like, what does the research and laboratory equipment scope exclusion cover? And does it cover this? We very happily engage with those sorts of questions. So if you've got those, please drop us a message and we can cover them in a podcast scenario like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tom.